Hello, it's Cyrano coming back to you with the second part of miniature gaming in TTS. I was very pleased by the reception of the first one. I have no idea what the universe is for this, but it's big enough that we've had a lot of visitors come out and ask some great questions and offer some very kind comments. So I always said I wanted to move along pretty quickly, not necessarily take too much time in each one of them, because I've only got so much to say. But at a certain point, I also do want to start taking your questions and maybe responding to some of those to see if there are things that I'm doing that don't make any sense, because I don't want to make any ignorant assumptions about what people know or don't know. Speaking of that, and saying goodbye to my dear friends at the Armchair Dragoons, things that I forgot. Number one, we are indeed talking about, when I say TTS, I mean Tabletop Simulator. Sorry I didn't say that. I realize I didn't, and that's my bad. This is a program that is available. I found it on Steam. I bought it almost on a lark and have since logged well over 400 hours on it. It is not as graphics intensive as you might think. It runs pretty well on moderate range systems. Obviously, the more you do, the more it's going to take. But the main thing is, yes, it's Tabletop Simulator. You can look for it on Steam. It's available for the Mac and for the PC. The other thing I would say about it, always wait for the sale. It's, as of this recording, it's on sale for not a whole lot of money. So, and considering the amount of time I've gotten out of it, if you get into it the way I do, I don't have a game from which I got more enjoyment for a dollar. So, wonderful. Number two, and I forgot to say this, one of the criticisms I hear most consistently about Tabletop Simulator is the weird bouncy physics. Most people know Tabletop Simulator first through its ability to flip the table. Everybody likes that. It's fun to do from time to time, but that wears off quickly. But what it leaves behind is a very bouncy physics model. Turn it off. And that's easy to do. You come up here to Options. Forgive me, it's over here in Configuration. And you go down here to the very bottom and it says Physics. Okay, right there. Set it to Locked. It's hard to explain other than to say that this was originally constructed as a physics simulator to develop a physics engine. And if you set it to full or to semi-lock, you get all sorts of bouncy nonsense that you will not want when playing miniature games. It's fun to fool around with, and because you save everything, you can do whatever you like. But for what we're doing, turn it to locked. Shut it down. Number three, change the drop distance. That's up here, this dude holding the weight. It's called lift height. I call it drop distance because that's what it is. See, I've got mine all the way down. Some people, when they play miniatures games, like it a little higher. This is the height that figures and trays will raise to when you're moving them around the board. Set it to the lowest possible drop distance. You're going to thank me later. I wish, and if anybody from Tabletop Simulator, of which I've been quite the proponent, hears this, I wish we could get this something more granular than 15 degrees. Miniature wargamers, quite honestly, I understand not everybody wants it, but I would like it at no more than 5. Frankly, there's a part of me that would like it to be able to set it down to 1. But right now, 15 just every now and again causes a little bit of pivoting problems. So if anybody's listening, lower that. But definitely lower your drop height. Number 4, Imgur. I didn't explain how it is that you go in there and you load up graphics into a map like this one. You need a graphic hosting site. And that's what this whole business... Oh, that's right. I have to do this upside down. That's what this whole business is about here. You'll notice I use Imgur. It's a free service. Use the images function. You don't have to post anything publicly as a graphic when you start to use Imgur, and I can certainly explain that to anyone that would care to hear it. I figure most of you are smart enough to figure out how to do it. But definitely use Imgur or something like it. You have to, because otherwise the graphic won't be available to you. You can't load it in. And that's where you get that link from that you saw there in the menu for the flex table. You have to pull that down, copy it, paste it in place, and then it's a picture. It takes most of the standard file formats. My wife, who designs my maps, she does them in PNG. It could take JPEG. Obviously, the higher the resolution you can upload there, the better the quality you're going to get when it shows up in this wonderful 3D environment. And finally, I forgot to mention the power of saving. And to talk a little bit more about that, why don't we take a drift over to the table we've been working on. Ah, here's our Austrians. Well, I said the first thing we were going to do with our Austrians was start to stat them out according to black powder, but that's not true. We can't do that first because I forgot that Austrian troops in black powder, well, like in history, had big battalions. So these paltry 6 stands won't do. We need 9 stands. Well, in any other world, we'd have a whole lot of painting to do, but here in Tabletop Simulator, we've just got some cutting and pasting to do. And lo and behold, I've got 9 stand battalions. But the other thing I said I wanted to do is I wanted to stat them. Now, if anybody out there is commenting on this and can figure out a more convenient way to do this, I am all flippin' ears because I am no big fan of this part. Frankly, this is the one part of this process I find tedious, which isn't bad considering how much I get out of it. But here's what we do. We're going to take our troops right here to the edge of the table. We're going to go here, we're going to right-click on them. And this is the part that drives me nuts because I can't get this piece right here to be big enough. But I'm going to say that this is the 1st Battalion, Infantry Regiment 7, Colorado. Now, as we know, these troops in black powder have statistics. I happen to know what they are. Its hand-to-hand is 6. Their shooting is a 4, I believe. Cheating. Telling a little secret over here. 6, 3, 4, 3. There's a 3. Their morale is a 4. And their stamina is a 3. They also have 2 special abilities that come out of the Clash of Eagles book for black powder. One is Poor Mixed Formation. And the other is this horrifically spelled thing that I just can't deal with. Flintenkartasche. I know what it is. But in their desire for verisimilitude, I do think my friends at Black Powder have driven me crazy by using German words. All right. So now we have the 1st Battalion, IR-7 Colorado. All their stats are in. We know what they are. I've played a lot of miniature games. This is easier when you're actually playing the game to know instantly what their statistics are with having to look at any chart, anything else like that. So there we have it. We have 9, this is again a full 9-stand group, fully statted out. And we would think, well, now we're in for a hard time. Well, now you'll notice over here, as you already might have seen, I did this in advance. Make them big. You'll notice that it preserves the statistics in the copy-paste process, something for which I'm quite grateful. One trick that I do like to use is I come in here once I'm all done, grab this guy, and one thing you can do, although it can be finicky, let's see how I do today. Not bad by my usual standards. And Control-C to copy. I'm going to grab this unit here. Put them there. And there's those stats. By and large, in black powder, these battalions have the same strengths. So let's imagine that this is the 3rd Battalion. IR-7. Don't need a comma in there, do we? All right. Oh, and they're a little short too. We got to fix that. There we go. Now, it's time for me to give you the big speech. I love Tabletop Simulator. A lot. There's one thing that drives me absolutely batty, and it's never been fixed. The join. Remember we did the joining last time? We linked these fellas with the linking tool to the base on which they're standing. It's not perfect. And if you start stacking guys too much on top of each other, if you start throwing guys around, you will create the Holocaust. It's a whirling nightmare that will destroy your table. It's kind of creepy the first time it happens, especially if it happens right after you've done a whole lot of work and haven't saved. Remember to save. But the key way to avoid it that I have discovered is to always just be reasonable. You don't have to be dainty about it. For example, you can shoot these figs right over these figs and it's not a problem. It's where you start throwing things, dumping things, and above all else, copying and pasting on top of each other. You want to make a full battalion like this, you can absolutely do it. It's a great tool. Do it over here. Don't do it right on top of another unit, or again, you will get the bad thing to happen. This is true of all troops. Be mindful of it. I can almost uniformly make it happen. They know it's a problem. It's part of their physics engine. It is improved if you take down the physics like we talked about early on, but it isn't solved, so please be mindful. All right, there's your warning. So we've done all, look at this, we've statted out all these wonderful battalions. We've got them already. Now let's come over here and deal with some of the other troop types we've got, because that's important too. How about our horses? Horses and riders. Well, I brought them along. Remember we put them in this bag? Well, here they are now. This is going to be our Austrian Hussar and his mount. Well, we can see he's looking at those guys. They're a little bit tiny. There's a number of ways to do this, but frankly, the only way I like is by eyeball. So once again, I've got a standard fella that I like to use, that I like to bring over from my saved items, plunk him down and just use him because I know he's right. Remember I used this British fella over here last time? I've got the same thing with my horse, and this is him right here. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to put these two fellas together. Yeah, sure enough, my horse is tiny. Then I'm going to grab this guy. I'm going to put the Austrian Hussar right there, turn him around. I'm going to click on him. I'm going to click on him. That's control clicking, by the way. And then I'm just going to start hitting that plus key. I still think that's a little light. I don't know. Yeah, I think that's better. That's a big horse. Oh, no, I got it wrong. Like I say, there is a scaling tool. I confess I don't trust it. And I've painted enough figures to know that I just like to fuss with it a little bit. Especially since, as we've already seen, all you got to do is get it right once. And you'll always have it right. Let's take a look at one bigger, just to see what we still think about that. Yes, I don't mind thinking of myself as Bob Ross with toy soldiers at these moments. Yeah, they're Hussars. They can be one smaller. All right. They, of course, need a specially sized base. That's this one right here. You'll notice that it is the .50 millimeter. These are 40 millimeters. These are 50 in scale. We'll take this fellow right here. We'll take this fellow right here and put him on top. Now, I also double check, because my wife has pointed this out, who's got a much better eye for these things than I do, that sometimes we can get goofy on the scale between these fellers. But we're fine. They're good. I like it. Sort of put him here. And again, take a little time with this. It's okay. Because one time with this is all you need. Where should he sit? I think that's about right. I've only ridden a horse a half dozen times in my life, so I have no idea. Now, of course, he's wrong here, left to right. I think that's good. Well, now I need my join tool. He's on there. Now he's linked to the horse. Of course, now I need another horse. And now we do the last step, which is coming overhead. Like I say, measure twice. I think they look splendid, personally. I don't know about you all, but I was never the world's best painter. I liked it when I could still see well enough to do it. but I was never great at it. Again, my wife was always better when I could persuade her to paint my special units. But these guys are just dandy. All right, look at that. They're done. And there they are. A fine group of hussars ready for battle. Look at them. I think they look grand. All right. Now we got to talk about cannon. Cannon are much the same story, except they use, obviously, infantry, horse, and guns. I use this base. This is the 50mm base again. I think it's got the frontage issues. It's certainly not religion or anything like that, but it works well enough. The gun, I use the 6-pounder model. That one is clearly not the right model. I'm going to have to go fetch another one. Let me, let's, I thought I was better prepared for this, but this one has shown me to have failed just one little bit. I'm going to peek into my Quatre Bras set, which I keep taunting you with. One thing you learn, this is a technique that I often use, which is going into any one of the existing models and hitting this expand option. And by doing expand, it goes in and lets me look at all the models that are in that particular unit. And it breaks it down by bases, by models, by all the individual component parts, so that I can pick out the one that I want. The problem is that the more models that are in there, it's actually loading them into memory. And so the more of them that you have, the longer it takes. And that, perhaps I shouldn't have picked Quatre Bras, just given how many bloody units I've got in that little creature. But we'll hang out for one more second before we abandon the quest. One of the other neat things that you will see in Tabletop Simulator that I'm particularly fond of is the fact that the game will load this section, this workshop section. Oh, here we are. Yeah, I got a lot of guys. There we go. Show me this. Just in case, I'm going to bring that in. So you can see there's all those models. Bring them in. Oh, I guess I did use a longer base. Look at me being wrong. Won't be the first time. Much better. Curious to find out how big it is, but I want to keep the video moving. In any event, it's a square, bigger one, and I'm going to put this right in the middle. I used the 6-pound model. I could get, there are, and they're quite nice. There's howitzer models, there's 12-pound models. I used the 6 just because I particularly like it, and I like the aesthetic. I like the way it fits. But you could certainly do it with the other one. We have some Austrian artillerists. Remember those from last time? I like 4. I think 4 is a good number. And here's where you can do a little bit of the old diorama shtick. You know, come in here and set them in different places and positions and poses. Well, they don't have poses, but you can certainly set them up however you like. There they are. Always remember to fix them down to the base. There they are. And then they're obviously going to need... Are they the right size? He suddenly realizes. Too late, perhaps? But it doesn't matter. We're playing Tabletop Simulator. Even if they're not. Let's take a look at our guide. Nope, they're fine. Seemed a little big. But remember, we always have that fellow around. Now we need our horses, because we have to be able to represent a limber in some way. And there's our standard horse. I think that'll do. And we're going to cut and paste the base. so that we have another one. Center these lads up and join them. This way, of course, is limbered, and when they're at a distance, and pulling this way. And when they're like this, at a 3-inch distance, now they're unlimbered. Simple enough. So there we have one battery of guns. Now, the last thing is leaders. What do you do with leaders? Well, I've already sized these guys up properly, so I won't waste too much time on that. But the way I do leaders, as you recall in Black Powder, you need brigade commanders, and you need the division commanders, and you need the army commanders. Well, I try to keep it pretty simple. I use this narrower base that I found and is available. My narrow base go. I use this narrower base here. I lied. This is the one I use for all of my brigadiers. And what I do is I place a single horse with a commander. You see, here's our officers. And obviously I would position and bolt him down. And that's how I depict a individual commander. I use the cavalry bases, the 50mm bases, and I again place a single commander on them. But then I pull out an officer or another figure or something else to depict that this is someone who has those he commands. So one thing I'm given to do is, if I know he's an infantry commander, I'll grab one of these boys and I'll put him right here. And if he has one figure with him, guarding and protecting, again, you can use officers, I often do that. If he has one figure with him, he's a divisional commander. If he has two, well, now he's an army commander or a corps commander. And again, we stat them out. You can see he's statted out already. There's our guy, Feldmarschall Saint-Julien from the Austrian army. He's got a strategic rating of 7. So that's how I do it. And obviously it's fairly easy to punch these out. Well, before we wrap this one up, you remember I mentioned all the way in the beginning that I wanted to talk to you about the importance of saving and the importance of using this as a tool. It's something that I use variously, and why do I mean that? It's because usually I like to have a bag, as you saw, where I can keep all the individual shopping the units I've shopped for, and I'm going to deploy. But sometimes one of the nice things you can do is take one Fusilier, and it's something that you have a lot of, and hitting Save Object. And I'm going to just call this Austrian Fusiliers. And now, when I go here into my saved objects, see these Austrian Fusiliers? I've got a whole unit, statted if it is, ready to go. And all I have to do is cut and paste them. This works for any unit on a base. Don't, again, put this in a bag. It creates the problem. Instead, use your save feature, especially if it's something you fussed with and you've created the stats for, and you'll be able to crank out as many of them as you want. So, that's how we manage to create the statistics. That's how we stat the fellas out. It's how I do cannon. It's how I do leaders. And it is also how I do cavalry. You see all those things. And obviously the statistical process, or the statting process, works much the same. So now, for the last piece, I think it'll be the last piece, we're going to turn to terrain, and I'm going to give you a little hint of what's coming. So here's this, and it's very, very nice, and I like it a lot. We're all set to go. But you know what? This won't do. Not for a special battle that we're using as a demonstration. So I asked my wife to whip up a little something, and we talked about it, and since we're going over there, she decided to give me a little Teugn-Hausen. Those of you familiar with the battlefield should recognize it. And just to make you want to come back and figure out how we did all the wonderful things, this is what we're heading towards. So, I hope you've liked it. I hope you've enjoyed so far what we've seen. I hope it's helped you out in some way and maybe encouraged you to play a little bit of Tabletop Simulator, some miniatures. And obviously the principles here apply to everything else. Perhaps in a fourth episode I'll just show you some of the different sets that I've built and that we've played on. And it's not limited to Napoleonics, although I think all wargaming should be limited to Napoleonics. That's just a personal opinion. But again, I hope you've enjoyed it. I very much thank you for coming along from the ride and hope that we'll see you next time. Take care.